Today I'm going to show you how to sew a mermaid tail Christmas stocking. This is a super cute project for little girls, and the pattern pieces for this sewing project are below in a link in the description box, but if you're watching from our website, alohasewingcompany.com, welcome and sew along. Once you have your pattern pieces printed out, make sure you cut 2 for the mermaid stocking, the tail, 1 for the cuff here, and 1 for the hanging loop. You can also use a piece of ribbon if you don't want to make the hanging loop. The first thing you're going to do is get the mermaid body and the tail and lay them across the short bottom with the right sides of the fabric together. That's the pretty sides of the fabric. You're going to sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance right across the bottom there. Here is mine serged. You can use your sewing machine if you want to. I used my serger for a nice clean finish. And all you're going to do is flip this back open and press open that seam. Do this for both of your mermaid tail stocking pieces. Now you're going to lay them with the right sides together. The pretty sides of your fabric should be kissing. I like to go ahead and line it up right here at the seams and pin or clip this into place all the way around, starting right there at the seams, all the way around our stocking, except for at the top, because we're not going to sew across the top quite yet. Using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, go ahead and start at the top and sew all the way around this entire stocking. I'm going to show you how I do this on my sewing machine for our beginner sewers so that you know how to easily sew around these curves with your sewing machine. You're going to always start and end with a back stitch to hold and lock those stitches in place. And then when you get to any points in your fabric, like right here at the seams, that you need to pivot that fabric, you're going to stop, put your needle inside the fabric, lift your presser foot, rotate your fabric, and then continue sewing in the direction you need to sew. This helps you make nice crisp corners and go around curves. Now, as you're getting down here to these curves, they can be tricky, so just sew slowly using a short stitch length and go around those curves, lifting your presser foot with your needle inside the fabric as you rotate that fabric around. Do this as much as you need to and make sure to sew slowly. When you get to those corners, make sure you put your needle in the fabric again, pivot to go around each of these corners and curves. Here is mine all sewn. Again, we did not sew across the top. That should be open here. And across the bottom, we will have some excess seam allowance that we're going to trim off. And we're going to go to each of our corners and make little snips all the way up to the stitches, but making sure not to cut through our stitches. And then we're going to go around each of our curves and make little slits in the fabric around those curves so that our fabric does not pucker once we flip this right side out. And again, I'm just cutting right up to the stitch length, not going through the stitches. You can also trim off any excess fabric that you have left in the seam allowance if you need to. You can use pinking shears instead of cutting these slits as well. Now let's go to the opening at the top and flip this right side out. I like to go ahead and use a chopstick to go in through the top and poke out all of my curves and smoothen out all of my seams. Make sure you don't poke too hard to go through your stitches though. You can go ahead and iron this flat and get out any wrinkles at this time now if you want to as well. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and sew our hanging loop. This is so you can hang this on a mantle. You're going to get it with the right sides together and sew right close to the edge using about a 1/8 or a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you've done this, you need to turn this tube right side out. I like to use a large safety pin. I go into the folded corner, just like I'm doing here, close the safety pin, and press the bottom of the safety pin into the tube and cinch this and pull the fabric over the safety pin as I cinch all the way down. Now, if you do not want to sew this hanging loop, I suggest using a 3/8 or 5/8 inch width ribbon and just cut it to the length of that pattern piece for your hanging loop. And then you don't have to sew this part. Once you've done that, go ahead and iron this flat. Make sure the seam here is right in the middle because you're going to hide that later. Now let's get our cuff. This is the right side of the fabric and this is the wrong side. You're going to lay it together just like you cut it on the fold with the right sides together and sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance right across those short edges. Now we're going to fold this up into a cuff. Do that by opening up this tube and making sure to flatten your seam allowance. If you need to use an iron, you can do that. And then you are going to match the bottom and the top of your seams together. And then the right side of your fabric should be showing now. Go ahead and pin or clip those two seams together and then roll the rest of this up into a cuff. Now what we want to do is mark this cuff into 4 equal pieces. So we are going to find the exact adjacent part of this cuff from where we just pinned or clipped and pin or clip that piece as well. Then you are going to match those 2 pinned or clipped pieces together and match those together and they will give you the 2 side pieces and pin or clip those as well. This gives you the 4 equal parts, so that way when we're attaching it to the actual stocking piece, we're attaching it evenly. So now go ahead and grab your main stocking piece. I have not yet ironed mine, so forgive that part. And what we're going to do is fold this in half at the top, putting the 2 side seams together so that we make a nice fold, and we're gonna find the front center and the back center and make a nice little clip. You can also make a mark. I just like to make a small little clip, just small enough for me to see it, so that way it marks the front center and the back center. Then you're going to get your cuff with the folded part up and the raw edges towards the bottom, and you're going to put the folded edges of your cuff inside of your actual mermaid tail stocking. Line up the front center slit with that first front center pinned or clipped part of your cuff and pin or clip them together. Do the same thing with the side seams, the back center, and your other side seam. And then you have this nice and evenly pinned or clipped together. Now get your hanging loop, fold it in half with a seam on the inside. And you want to get your raw edges and make sure the raw edges are matched up with the raw edges across the top of your stocking. So we are going to get the back of our stocking and place our hanging loop or your ribbon piece that's folded with the raw edges up and the fold inside the stocking. We're going to place it sandwiched right in between the cuff and the outer stocking, right next to the side seam on the back of your stocking piece. So it's going to be your 3 different fabrics sandwiched together. So your cuff, your hanging loop or your ribbon, and then your actual outer stocking, right next to the side seam on the back of your stocking. Pin or clip that in place and then sew all the way around. I'm going to show you how I sew this using my serger. You'll sew it the same exact way using your sewing machine, and your raw edges won't show sewing it this way. So if you're using your sewing machine, don't worry about finishing those edges unless you just want to. Now here is it all sewn together. All you have to do is flip your cuff upwards, and then you're going to flip it back downwards over the outer stocking. Once you do that, you'll see the hanging loop will be nice and secure right there in the back of your stocking, and none of your edges, raw edges, are showing on this finished project. And now you are completely finished sewing this. If you haven't already ironed it and gotten out your wrinkles, go ahead and do that now as well. This is a super fun project to make for little girls. I made this one for the angel tree that we are going to adopt as a family, and we can fill it with goodies for our adopted angel this Christmas season.
I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and have fun sewing along with me. Please, please, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel to see all of our easy sewing patterns as they're released. Visit AlohaSewingCompany.com, or the link is down below in the description box on YouTube to see all of our super easy sewing patterns that you can print at home so you can start to sew faster. We make sewing patterns for literally everything, from baby items, kids' clothes, decorations, holiday stuff and gifts, bags and more. And before you go, mahalo.